Welcome to the Young Entrepreneurs Podcast. We are currently on episode number 17. My guest is Greg Wong, who is a retired senior executive who's built a long career in technology and in the finance field, as well as achieving retirement early through discipline, smart financial habits, leadership, and a long-term thinking. And in this episode, we will dive into his career path, his money philosophy, how his upbringing shaped his financial discipline, and the lessons young people can use to build financial freedom and a successful life. So my first question is, can you walk us through your early career and how you got into the tech and the finance field?
Sure. Well, first of all, Spencer, great to be here. Great to be back in Annapolis. Coming from Florida, there's this white snow on the ground. And just going into the holidays, love seeing the holiday setup you got here. And so I'm just happy to be here. So, it kind of starts my background in finance. Where I used to be a naval officer, and I got my MBA in finance. And that's when I really got exposed to just a whole area of money and banking and raising capital. And it was something that I would just, was entirely attracted to doing. It was something that I really enjoyed. And as part of my MBA program, there was an award ceremony for Beta Gamma Sigma. It's like an honor society.
Yeah.
And got a chance to meet the key presenter there, a guy by the name of Russ Ramsey. And he was one of the founders of the investment banking firm Friedman Billings Ramsey.
Okay.
And as part of that, he asked if I would send him a copy of my resume, and met him about a week later. And he said he was starting up a technology investment banking group. Now, this is back in 1996 when technology was still, really getting started. And so just being in the right place at the right time, and the fact that I had a computer science undergraduate degree combined with the finance MBA degree, it was just a really good fit for me, and just timing wise, being in the right place at the right time.
So the two were kind of a powerhouse financial major, the MBA and then the computer science undergrad major as well.
Yeah. My job was really to do finance, but because I was working in a sector, I actually understood what the CEOs and the companies were trying to do. And so it wasn't a foreign language to me, like as if it was mining or, real estate or something that I didn't have a background in. And so it was something that I could leverage. And again, it was a time when the internet was just getting started and companies were being created, and it was actually kind of fun.
And that's a little bit kind of what we're in a little bit today, if you will.
Yeah, that's actually a great observation. So just like today with AI, you rewind 2 years ago, the landscape is totally different. And if you go forward 2 years from now, the landscape will continue to be different. Now, I think what's a little different in today is that you have some powerhouse companies that have seen the light on AI, like Amazon, like Microsoft, Salesforce, all these people who are embracing AI. And for them, yes, it is a new environment, a whole new landscape that they're trying to take advantage of. But they're coming from a place where they actually already have lots of customers, lots of employees, lots of capital. Back in those days, you had 3 people in a garage starting up an idea. And, so I think it's a different overall ecosystem, but you're absolutely right. Just the products and services and things that you're going to be able to do is evolving at a rapid pace right now.
Now, is it similar to the dot-com bubble, if you will, because of certain individuals jumping on the innovations right as they're starting out, similar to how AI and the machine learning is? Or are they a little different, if you will?
No, well, I think what it is, you're still going to have winners, and unfortunately, you can have losers. And I mean by losers is that they weren't able to take their idea and really grow it into the kind of corporate success that they had hoped for. And I think you're going to see that shakeout happen, but you're still going to have some that are not only survivors, but people that are going to really find new breakthroughs and new ways to use AI, and they're going to be very successful. But I really think that happens in any new technology environment where there's something new comes along, you're going to have a lot of people trying different stuff, and some are going to figure it out and do really well. And a lot of them, it's just going to be hard. Look, being an entrepreneur, it's really, really hard. And starting a company, especially from scratch, is really, really, really hard. And I think that in this day and age, I really respect those folks. But I think what's different from the bubble days was it was so new that literally people are coming up with just crazy ideas and business models that if you actually thought it through, they weren't ever going to make money. And I think nowadays people at least have a more conscious approach to their business models.
So they kind of understand how they can make more money versus not really knowing how to go about it and like starting it, if you will.
Yeah, and it's still going to be hard. They're still going to have to make the right business decisions, the right channels, the right go-to-market strategy, and they're going to have to kind of get lucky. But I think where it's before was just anything you could throw it against the wall, people would do. I think you're going to be more thoughtful about it nowadays.
Is there ways that it's going to be seen as productive? Meaning, let's say I work at a company and I use AI to help me become, let's say, 80% productive versus if I hadn't used it, and now I'm having to, let's say, spend five or 2 days on an assignment or a project or whatever it is. Meaning, it's helping you to become more productive, and you're able to do multiple tasks a lot faster than you were if you didn't implement it, use it.
I think that's going to be one segment of the application of AI. I think the other that even is more exciting to me is it's going to make you better at what you do. So you're going to be able to have more information distilled at your fingertips. So when you decide to make a decision, you're going to have more insight as to make the better decision. You're going to be more informed. If say you're in marketing, you're going to know more about your customers because you're going to have all this data on customers, but the AI might be able to tell you, oh, you're a real target market who's been buying your products. You thought it was, this married couple with 2 kids. Actually, it's not. It's actually, a single males that are over 50. Okay. And that's going to help you make better decisions. But, you can go figure that out on your own, but it's a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it's going to turn it much quicker to you. And then you might say, okay, show me different ideas to connect with this end target market. And you're going to have multiple things to look at rather than hiring an ad agency to come sit with you, understand your customers, understand your product. It's going to go a whole lot faster, and it's going to be cheaper, and you're going to be able to go ahead and try something. And if it doesn't work, you can switch and try something else quickly. And I think that's going to be the velocity. And that's the term I would use. The velocity of business and decision-making is going to increase because AI is going to help you be more efficient.
Now, I know that there's been lots of talks about people not store them for it's not that they're lazy, but it's more the fact that they can rely on the technology to
Mm-hmm.
do a large amount of their jobs
Mm-hmm.
versus the current times, and that they can have a lot more leisure time and a lot more things that they wouldn't have had as a result of the advancements in AI or
Mm-hmm.
whatever technology that it is.
Well, if all you got to do is look at history, right? And, think about when computers first came around. People used to do math calculations on slide rules, right? I mean, if you went into a high school today or college and said, what is this? And show them a slide rule, they'll have no idea what that is. It's just changed. And so things have is it better? Well, I think in many ways it has. I think what you got to be careful is to understand the why. See, if you just only getting the output given to you from AI and you just run with it and not understand where it came from or why it is that way, I think it actually could lead to you making bad decisions. But if you understand why it's doing it and how it's doing it, at least at a high level, then you go, okay, I'm going to rely on that and do something with it.
So it's more of how the user interprets what they inputted into the computer, but also
I
what
think
they're
you
getting out of it
I
as
think
well.
your input, but just understanding again, what is the basis for how this works? Again, if you just know that the answer is 7, that's not helpful. But if you understood that here's the math problem, here's how it goes about it. I don't want to do that math
Correct.
problem, right? And I might do it and I might get to do it wrong, but at least I understand kind of what it's doing and then applying that. I think that's the key.
And also if it decides to tell you different approaches that you wouldn't have thought about, like let's say you only thought about one approach, which is 4 plus 3 is 7,
Right.
versus if the computer tells you, well, that one way is correct, but here's also maybe 2 or 3 different ways that get you to that solution or that answer, if you will.
Yeah, now that's great that you get those additional alternatives, but you also have to be careful about false positives, right? Where it tells you, 3 plus 3 is 7. You kind of have to go, wait a second, that doesn't seem right. In other words, it might suggest some marketing strategy, but you go, wait a second, that's not applicable for where I live, or even your style and approach. Just because you can do it one way, you might go, that doesn't really fit for what I'm trying to accomplish as a company or with my objective.
And so that can that be applied to, let's say, if you're new to the market and let's say you don't know anything about whether it's media production or whatever it is, that you rely on certain things that you think are the right answer or that seem suitable for what you're doing, but you're not sure, if you will.
Well, here's an example. You have your podcast channel, right?
Correct.
So, and you really want to have a bigger audience and a lot of views. It might come up with, here's some things you should do to get a lot of views. But the views may not be from the right kind of audience you're looking for. Or it might be just somebody who's just, scrolling and not really paying attention, and you get a view. That's a strategy and you will get your results, but it may not be what you really are shooting for.
That's kind of what I was aiming at,
Yeah.
meaning what you think you want versus what you actually know. Meaning, I think part of what I'm trying to say is
Yes.
that if you're not an expert in the field, how do you kind of go, well, I don't really know about what it is that I'm doing, and how do you understand this is the right way to go about it versus the
It's great.
opposite?
And the way I would think about it, think of it as an advisor, or a consultant, and saying, here's what I think you should do. Now, you as the owner or the business person have to say, yeah, you know what? Let's go do that. Or you might go, you know what? I don't like that idea, or I don't think that's the right approach. And that's where I think the human really is going to be the key factor. Is think of AI as there to help you, but still you have to make the end decision and go with your gut, right? I mean, that's part of what being an experienced business person, experienced leader, is you have this ability to take your experiences, your knowledge, and your intuition and go, okay, this is what I think we should do.
So to kind of know and to trust yourself and go, this is what's going to work versus not, if you will.
Yeah. And again, that or else you're just going to, why be around? Just let the AI do everything, right? And you just sit and see what happens. And part of that may occur, but I still think that that ability to bring in a different, knowledge base and this thing again, I call your gut. That's what I think really breaks the mold.
And to not, because I think a lot of people, you have a gut feeling, but I feel a lot of people, they don't trust their gut feeling or whatever it is,
Yes.
and they kind of go, I'm not gonna fully analyze what it is, and I'm just gonna say no. Let's say for quick kicks and giggles, I'm ignorant. I don't know much about whatever it is that I'm doing, and I think I know what it is, and I'm not gonna trust my gut.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna trust the wrong versus the right road, which is what my gut's
Well,
telling me to do.
you still don't know what either gut might be wrong, but here's the beauty of it. At the end of the day, you look in the mirror and go, you know what? That was my decision. And I did the best I could with the information I had at the time. And if you do that, you don't have regrets. That's the key. It's when you let something else make the decision for you, it might be the right decision. It might work out wonderfully. But if it doesn't, you're going to go, why did I do that? And I think at the end of the day, I would rather have the ups and downs of being right and wrong with my gut, knowing it was me rather than saying, oh, I let something else or someone else make all the decisions for me. And I went along for the ride.
And is that kind of what things are a little bit? Meaning people let other things, if you will, kind of interfere and get within their input for doing certain things or for doing whatever it is that they want to do, whether it's a dream
So
or
sometimes, well, I mean, I think you have to be, your gut hopefully is taking into account a lot of different factors, right? But sometimes you might go, the logical decision is to do this, but my gut tells me I really should do that. That's the, I would actually, you need to be thoughtful about it, but I actually would lean towards the gut because there's something more than just the knowledge. There's something there that's telling you, I really should give this a shot, or I should really do this. And again, for most decisions in life, if it doesn't work out, you can pivot and go a different direction, right? What's not good is when you just don't make any decisions. You just kind of plod along, and whether it's days, weeks, or years later, you're going, why didn't I do something that I wanted to do?
correct.
Right? You're again, it's back to the podcast.
Correct.
If you sit around and logically analyze it, how many podcasts are there out there? How many, how hard is it to get people to pay attention when they have busy lives and other channels and other things that, whether it's Netflix or whatever they do that uses up their time? Why would they spend their time listening to what you have to share? Right?
Correct.
But on the other hand, your gut's like, this is something I want to do. And whether I have lots of people listening or a limited audience, either way, I'm doing something I want to do. Well, that's great. And again, the logical versus the gut.
All right. My next question is: was there a moment where you realized you were on a path toward senior leadership?
So when I was an investment banker, you start as, we call them assistant vice presidents, they're essentially associates. And then think of it as key team members.
Okay.
And within the execution team, the leader of that is a vice president. So you're running the deals, whether it's an M&A deal of buying somebody or selling a company or trying to raise money for them, private capital or going public. That's your transaction leader who's executing. When you realize that you become more senior leadership is when you go from being responsible for doing something to having to be the one who creates the opportunity. So you're the one who has to go to the boards of directors and convince them to hire your firm and your team to run the deal for them versus some other firm. And so when you are the person who is doing the pitching and doing the convincing, and when the boards, instead of the vice president and the associates are the ones who do the analysis and come up with the presentation, but the one who actually does the presentation and answers the questions for the board, that's either senior vice presidents or managing directors. And when you kind of evolve into that responsibility, then you kind of know you've moved to a different echelon.
So kind of what I'm understanding is that when you enter the company, there's people they give you people or tasks or whatever it is that you follow, but then as you go up, it's kind of on you to not just to reach out, but also to explain and give a leverage, if you will, as to why you're the best option.
Well, I think the way to think about it is there's people who execute and do stuff, and you have to do that really, really well. And that's very important. And that's a real, significant, people who do that are very valuable. But I think there's the people who then create the business and grow the business. And that's that higher level, and also are perceived from, board of directors that this person is someone I really should consider listening to.
Well, meaning that when you come in initially, you're following the leads that other people have made, but then as you go up,
You're
You're
creating them.
creating your own leads and you're explaining why you or your company are the right reason.
That's a good way to think about it. One where it goes from you're working on someone else's team to, hey, the buck stops with you. If you don't go create the business, there is no business.
Was it obviously the onus is on you, but is it shift a little bit? Meaning you have to develop the plan, develop the questions, develop the PowerPoint, and kind of pivot it in a way that the customer that kind of gets them to say, here's why we really want to trust you.
Yeah. Well, I think there's always analysis to be done. And the analysis can sometimes give you an obvious conclusion, but how you communicate what that conclusion is. And usually it's not it's not binary, a yes or a no. There's usually gray areas and questions and what if scenarios that come up and how you answer those. And based on your experience and knowledge, I think is really valuable at that senior level. I think it is both. I mean, you as an individual obviously have your lens and perspective, but you're part of a team, right? And your firm will also, they will have knowledge and insight into other parts. For instance, is this a good time to go public? Well, right now it seems like institutional investors are not really, they're keeping an eye on their capital. They're not looking for riskier investments, or there might be vice versa, which is, they really love these type of companies. And, now's the time to go because they're really interested in the type of company that you are, and they want to invest in those now. And that information can come from, the institutional salespeople, the research analysts, any different parts of the organization.
Now, I'm sure you've heard this before, but when people buy stocks, they
Mhm,
always think, when is the right time? And
mhm.
there is never a right time. Is more of it analyzing what is present in the market or within the company and saying, this is when we should do it, versus saying, well, there is no right or golden opportunity to do it. Like to either to buy a stock or like just in general to
Right.
pitch to a company or whatever it is.
Well, there's two different things. One is buying a stock as an individual, and the other one is as a company. So as a company, you're trying to do your best to time, the markets, and there's certain windows that are obvious every year. People, during between Christmas and New Year's, that's a bad time to go public because nobody's there. Everyone's on vacation, right?
Correct.
So timing can be, but also just overall market sentiment. If there's people thinking the economy is going the wrong direction, they may not be aggressively, investing in companies. Or they might say, what, we really think this is the next, 6 months are going to be really good for this sector. Be interested. I consider those macro timings as individual stocks. Yes, actually, there is good times and bad times to buy an exact single stock. The problem is you may not know that what's really happening at that company, the inside information. Things are going really well. Well, that's a good time to buy. Things are about to get bad, but they haven't told everybody yet. That's a bad time. And so you don't know that. And if you can guess it right, it'd be like betting on the NFL football games. You think the Giants are going to do really well this week, and they should, but who knows? They might throw 3 interceptions and lose the game. Okay, well, it was bad. So I think to pick an individual stock and timing, that's really difficult. And that's why people say, don't time the market. But I just don't think you just go, okay, I'm just going to put it in. And if you're in a broader set of stocks where there's an index fund or a mutual fund, and you have a long time perspective, not, I hope it makes a lot of money the next 2 days,
Correct.
then don't put the money in. And you might be wrong. You might put it in, the market goes bad next week. Okay, it might go up. You really don't know. But over time, it won't make a difference. Well, if you bought it at $9 or $10, 5 years later, if it's $100, do you really care? I mean,
No.
yeah, that one extra
Partially, yeah.
dollar, but you know what? That's not really that's not investing. If you're just trying to time it exactly right, trying to sell it next week, that's not investing, that's betting. You might as well, again, go look at the NBA and see what games are on tonight.
The reason that I kind of brought that up is because I know that a lot of people, like, if you start a company, you kind of go, when is the right time? And it's the same thing when you buy a stock because there is no, if you will, right time. And people, I think, overanalyze and go, well, I need to hold off and I don't need to just jump on board and jump, just commit to doing it and just going about it and actually doing it.
Well, it depends on what other priorities and other demands and objectives you have in your life, right? If you have, car payments and you have a mortgage, you might not just, quit your job and go start this other
Correct.
thing. You might go, well, here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my job, but on weekends, I'm going to go do this. And that's maybe a balanced way to do it. So I think it's situational. One of the big things though is sometimes people have great ideas and they're just too early, or the market isn't there. They're not ready for whatever that new product is. And sometimes that's why people come up with ideas and the company doesn't work so well, but another company 2 or 3 years later does the exact same thing and it works because the market's ready for it. What's interesting is some companies start as one thing and evolve into something different, right? So think about Netflix. Netflix actually started out by sending you a DVD in the mail,
Correct.
right? And then now it's the powerhouse in streaming. What did Amazon start off as?
Just selling books
Selling
online.
books online. And now you can get anything you want delivered the next day or sometimes the same day, in addition to music and data warehousing and data storage. They're doing so many things, right?
Correct.
And that's so part of it is do get started. Because if you never get started, you're never going to get there, right? We
Correct.
know that. But I think you have to be thoughtful about what paths you take and what the throttle is. Do you really step on the gas or do you kind of try it out and say, hey, is this really the right way to go? Or is this really the right product? And then if it starts taking off, you do more of that. But if it's not, then sometimes you need to switch and do something a little different.
And versus if it was the opposite, where let's say the market was over prepared for the product,
Mhm.
meaning versus if you just started and the market didn't, there wasn't customers or there wasn't an audience for the product, if you will.
Yeah, well, there's a difference between having a customer base, and the question is, are there every product, every service should solve a problem. A customer has a problem. They want coffee, but they don't want just any coffee. They want good coffee, right? You got to understand what are their alternatives. Maybe the other coffee is good enough, and what you're charging is too much. That's one angle. I think that it's important that you find a problem and have a solution that's better than what they currently have, how they're currently addressing it. And if you do, you have a shot. If whatever they're doing is good enough, I wouldn't I wouldn't try to solve that problem because by definition, it's good enough.
And it wouldn't really be beneficial to enter whatever market it is if it wouldn't work.
Yeah, but people do it. So for instance, my son introduced me over the summer to some company called Raising Cane's. I mean, we don't,
Todd Graves, yeah.
yeah, we don't really have that. I think it's just opening up in Florida now. All they sell is chicken tenders. You cannot order chicken wings, a chicken sandwich. I guess they do have a chicken sandwich, and all it is their chicken tenders on a bun,
Okay.
right? So, but that's all they do, and that's not a new thing, right? Chicken's been around for hundreds of years, right? And even fried chicken, right, or chicken sandwiches have been around, but they found a particular niche and a particular way of doing it, and I think they also have good marketing within how they're doing it. Okay, just because there's a solution, maybe there's a better way. Or maybe there's a segment of the market that goes, you know what, I want something a little different than what I've been having.
To kind of going off what you just said, meaning like a new approach to like an older way of
Yeah.
doing things.
Yeah.
What you just said about coffee.
Yeah. Coffee's been around for what? 100 years, 200 years, three, I don't know,
That plus.
right? Maybe even going back even 1,000 years. Yeah, but people have a different approach to it, and sometimes if you hit the right product, the right service at the right time, it can actually be pretty lucrative.
Now, what if it's been a saturated market? Like, let's say it's a candy company that's starting out within
Hmm.
the industry, and you have Mars and
Hmm.
Hershey and everybody else who's been there for 200 plus years. Meaning it's good, but it's also like, how do you how do you enter, but also how do you say we're a new company, but we're also here's why you need to trust our company because we're better, but we also aren't gonna do things the traditional way that they've been done for hundreds and
And,
hundreds
and
of
and that's
years.
what sometimes people are wanting and looking for, right? Now, so first of all, the product has to be something that they like. Let's use your candy example.
Correct.
It has to be, if it's just same old chocolate, that's not gonna make a difference. But if you had some twist to it and people go, wow, that is really good. Okay, you got to start. But then it's also that they call it product positioning, right? Or marketing. Why is this, better? And sometimes it doesn't have to be better. People just have to think that it's better, right? I mean, that's a lot of marketing. Is this soap really much better than that soap? Either way, you're going to get clean. Well, some people like the smell better, or it feels softer in your skin, or whatever. And is that entirely true? Maybe, but some of it's just perceived marketing. So to the candy, if you make this, wow, this is what all kids want for Halloween nowadays is this candy, but not that candy. Well, when I'm going to the store to buy Halloween candy to give out, I'll grab that packet versus this other packet. I don't really know, but that's what I've been marketed and that's what I believe. So that's what I'll do.
Okay. My next question is, what were the biggest career turning points for you?
So probably is one I mentioned earlier that I was at the right place at the right time when they were starting a technology investment banking group. And so it wasn't just to add one or two people, they were adding a number of people. So I think that helped out being on the ground floor of building that part of the business. The other one is when I joined one of my clients, a web.com,
Okay.
and down in Florida. And I left investment banking, which was really unusual. People don't usually do that, and joined a client where I essentially became the in-house investment banker. And that opened up a whole variety of professional opportunities and new experiences. Um, that was taking those chances and joining those organizations was, I think, big inflection points.
Now, is it kind of asking the right questions at the right time? Like, let's say it's post graduation and you don't have a job and you're at the right place at the right time. Is it kind of knowing who to approach and knowing what questions to ask that
I
gets the door open? Is it more of luck and just letting it unfold as it happens?
Well, I think people, I believe in luck, but I believe that people create their own luck. So did you go to that networking event and you happen to meet, this guy who runs a shipping business? And I think it's personality, right? So do you go up and talk to the person? Do you connect with them? If you connect with them, then you say, I just graduated and I'm, been trying to figure out what my next thing is. And that person might say, hey, we're looking for someone like you. Okay, there you go. You just had your quote luck, but was that luck or did you kind of create that? And if you didn't lean in to go talk to the person and try to connect with them, if you just said, you know what, that sounds interesting, I'm going to email in my resume, you'll be stuck with the other 487 resumes that show up on the email. And that's not that's not going to give you your shot. So I think it's not so much the questions to ask. I think it is being willing to do what it needs to take to connect with the right people. And when you do meet with them or somehow online, do build some sort of bridge. And people generally like to help people that they like. And so if they like you, they're going to try to help you. And they may not say, this is not, we're full up or we don't have any open positions. But you really should talk to a friend of mine who owns this company or 2 months later, when a position opens up, they might, I remember Spencer. We should give him a call. Okay. And so that's the way to do it. Is if you're passive, the world's not going to come to you. You need to figure out what you're interested in, what you want, and work your way to get there.
And there's a lot of it as well, consistency and a lot of follow through, meaning keeping on people's, whether it's your LinkedIn or your email, your messaging or whatever it is.
It has to be the right balance, right? If you become annoying, you're actually going to be hurting yourself. You got to find that way where it's a genuine connection. And, that means, maybe not once a year checking in with them, but certainly not every other day either. And maybe there's something you saw in their business. It's like they announced a new partnership. You might just send them a quick note saying, "Hey, I saw that you announced a partnership with Acme Shipping. Congratulations. Looks like it's a pretty good result for you guys." It's something as simple as that. You didn't ask for anything, but you stayed on their radar, and they might send you a little note. "Hey, thanks. Yeah, that was a good deal." Okay. You went from being somewhere at the bottom of a stack in their thoughts for at least a moment at the top of the stack, and then you're going to shrink back down, and that's okay. And sometimes just keeping them advised of other things you're doing in life. I just finished a certificate program here, or I know summer's coming up. Have you guys launched your internship program yet? That would be a worthwhile connection.
I think kind of what I was trying to ask was the person who drops the ball with the consistency and the follow
Hmm.
through versus the person who kind of, let's say, every 1 to 3 months is following up saying, like, just to
Keep it fresh.
keep it in top of the person's inbox so that the person getting it is aware that this person's kind of interested in whatever it is, so that
Hmm.
there's a interest versus just going, well, I just sent it one time and I'm not going to follow through and I'm not
Right.
going to show an interest and really pursue it and really chase after this person to get what I want.
And that's the difference between the people who create their own luck and the people who don't. Look, out of sight is out of mind. Business people have way too much going on. They're not sitting around thinking about, some person I met 7 months ago. They have fires that they're fighting, goals they're trying to work on, business they're trying to get done. So unless you make yourself relevant, you're just going to be forgotten.
You're just going to be like a number, like
Or,
another.
or better yet, you don't exist. And that's not good if you're trying to get a position at that company or trying to do some work with them.
My next question is, what qualities make someone successful in high pressure corporate environments?
I think, first of all, compartmentalization. So if there's a lot going on, you can get worried or distracted. What you need to do is say, okay, here's what I'm trying to solve, or here's what I'm trying to achieve. And then break it up into little parts. I need this person to do this. I need to make sure I call this person. I need to make sure I show up here. And I need to have a meeting between these three people, and we need to agree on, this document. Whatever it is, break it up into the parts and then make sure you get each part solved. Because by definition, if something doesn't get done, the overall project isn't going to get done the way you want. So in a high pressure environment and with a lot of things going on, you just need to step back. Don't get overwhelmed. Just break it into its parts and take care of each part. And then when you put it all together, you got the result you want.
What I've heard sometimes from whether it's people in class or assignments is that sometimes you you have to lay things out like very detailed so that, like, let's say you take somebody off the street who doesn't know whatever it is, so that they're able to look at it and execute a project or a plan or whatever it is.
You know what? I think if you're in that situation, I think you're in not a good situation. Because if you're going to have to spell it all out, you might as well just do it yourself. So hopefully you're able to say, here's what I want to have accomplished. You might say, make sure you think about this, or make sure you don't do that, because you may have an insight or knowledge that the person doesn't. And if you're dealing with people who, are really, are good at what they do, they'll go and get it done. Right. And that's, if you don't have to direct them every bit of the way, that's a big win. If you're going to have to do every little step, I'll just do it yourself.
And can part of that be having the right people put into place so that, I've told 2 or 3 people to do one task and they actually are going to follow through and do it versus what's the point if in me not hiring the person and me just doing it myself?
Well, there's several things you need to look for when you say the right person, right? First, they need to have the knowledge of how to do it. If you say, I want you to go write a book on French literature and they don't know French,
Correct.
it doesn't matter how motivated they are, right? Or how much you incentivize them to do it, they're not going to be able to do it. So you need to make sure that they have the basic skills. But then also you really are looking for people who want to do it, have a pride in doing it, that they're gonna just because you know how to do it. If you don't want to do it, you're either not going to do it or you're going to do a bad job. So you're really looking for people who have knowledge and also motivation. Then your job really as a leader is just to make sure that they have the tools and the resources they need to go accomplish it.
Now, is it better to take your time with hiring people versus rushing into it saying, I need 5 people for these positions and I need it right away versus, let's say, waiting a year or 2 and being like, here's the candidates in the pool, here's their qualifications, and here's what they bring, and here's what they add to value to the job that I need them to do or whatever it is?
So, so I think the right answer is to hire the right people at the right time. So if the right time is now, then you got to go now, and you just got to make sure you get the right people. The key words are opportunity cost. If you wait that year, what opportunities did you would have made in sales or efficiencies or whatever it is that you're doing by waiting for the quote right people? You're like, okay, that's great. We got the right people, but we could have gotten so much done over the last year if we just got started earlier. On the other hand, you get the wrong people right away, you're not going to get the objectives you have done, and you might have to fire them and hire new people.
Correct.
And you're like, oh my goodness, why did I, that was a waste of time.
That's kind of what I was driving at is if you hire the wrong people and they set you back versus if you're just patient and saying, okay, I'm reviewing what's available to me and the candidates who I'm considering versus just rushing into it saying, I'm going to hire them. I'm going to hire anybody and it doesn't work out. And I just needed to fill a role and I wasn't really thoughtful.
Unfortunately, the right answer, and the right answer is to hire the right people at the right time. That may mean you do have to wait a little bit. We can't hire them this week. Let's keep looking for, until we find the right people, but that might be 2 weeks from now. Then you go. To answer your question, at the end of the day, I would rather wait for the right people than to get the wrong people. Because if you have the wrong fit, and I don't mean like wrong people, there's some might be wonderful people, wonderful employees, it just might be not the right fit. If you have the wrong fit, then you will have spent time, money for salaries, their impact on other parts of the organization, and then you have to, replace them. And that's oftentimes more demand on resources in its entirety than if you had just said, I'll just keep that spot open until we find the right person.
And then also having to go in and fix whatever negative problem or whatever it was.
Exactly, that they didn't perform at.
My next question is, how do you approach leading teams and developing people? Which I kind of think we've started to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, I think the key thing is to look. Everyone has hopefully the intent to do a good job at whatever you're doing. But if you can understand what makes them tick, what their motivations are, that can be helpful to them. People often have goals more than just what they're doing today. So if you can understand what their goal is, whether it's to move up in management, to learn a new skill set, to move to the Los Angeles office, whatever it is that motivates them and what they're trying to accomplish. And if you genuinely try to help them get there, they're going to give you even that extra effort. And I think that works, for both sides. And so I think that that's the key thing to think about.
So kind of it being more of a personal skills and goals versus, let's just say, a number, if you will, for a number
Again,
person in the
understand the
company.
person, and people are all different. But you understand the person and genuinely try to help them achieve whatever they're trying to achieve. First of all, I think that's the right thing to do. But also, I think people really appreciate that you actually care.
Okay. My next question is, what's one leadership principle you wish more young professionals knew?
That's a good question. I think it's take care of people. And people is a different strata. So take care of your boss. If there's one thing, the number one, take care of your boss,
Correct.
right? If they want you to get something done, do it right and do it on time. Because they have other things that they're worried about, other things, if they can count on you, that's a big win. Okay. Second is take care of the people you work with. Because, they may be friends, they may not be friends, but they certainly are colleagues. And there'll be times that they need help on something, help them. Because there might be times when you need help on something and they can help you. So that's probably number two. And then three is if you're in a leadership position, take care of the people who work for you because you are not going to be successful without their help. And that is, if you think about it from those three perspectives, that's how you're going to really, when you're new at it and you're just starting an industry, you may not have that kind of lens. But if you, again, take care of your boss, take care of your colleagues, and when you have people working for you, take care of your, people who are on your team. That's going to pay off in the long run.
And is it obviously more of the personal approach, but also coming in and wanting to actually see what drives them a little bit, if you will? Because I know that you touched on that kind of what their personal goals and their personal ambitions are besides coming to work and doing the task and getting paid.
You just need to make sure this is what they want, get it done right, and to get it done on time. That's that you just made their day. Okay. So I think that's more influential. Again, from a understanding the person, it applies more to that leadership or mentorship perspective.
And do you think that both sometimes employees and also bosses don't apply that, meaning they don't understand the people, they just
I
understand.
think a lot of times they don't. First of all, sometimes some bosses are just they're overwhelmed with the objectives or demands that they have on themselves, that the company puts on them or their boss puts on them, because everyone has a boss. Even the CEO has a boss. It's the board of directors. Even the board of directors have a boss. It's the shareholders. So everyone's got a boss. I think that I think if you step back and just make sure you're meeting the needs of whatever your target is, like I said, whether it's your boss, your colleagues, employees, or your customers, and doing that well, I think that's where you're going to make a difference.
Versus if you just, let's say you're a boss and you kind of go, I'm coming into work, I'm doing whatever I'm assigned, and I don't really care about the employees. Meaning, you just see them as kind of a turnover. Meaning, they're there to help me get my work done, and that's kind of it. And you don't see it beyond what it is for the job. Meaning, you don't see it for more of the personal helping people. You just see it for here's me at work. Here's how I get this done, and that's it. And then I move on and I do
But
the
that's why
next
you
thing.
call it, that's why you say good bosses and bad bosses. But see, what you also don't know is what's going on in their life. Their mother just might have had a stroke the week before, and they're trying to get her into the right long-term care. And what does that have to do with their work? And so they may be distant or not, in the right frame of mind. But whereas some other, bosses, again, they have they happen to be in the right place, the right time. They have good balance and they can really help grow you. And some people are selfish too, right? Some people are just caring about their own career paths and they see other people as the ladder to get to where they want to go. I think that analogy is somewhat right. You do need people, but you need to try to bring everybody with you, or at least move them in the direction that they want to do. So think of it as not just about your success, but the individual success of each person.
So more of kind of thinking about it as a collective versus the individual, if you will.
Yes, but knowing that in the collective, they're not all the same. That every individual, by definition, has their own motivations and goals that may be very different from the person who's right next to them.
And what if it's not reciprocated? Meaning, what if they don't do what you're doing? Meaning, you want to help them or do whatever it is that's good, but they don't want to do the exact same thing, if you will.
Well, again, I would still try to do help. I think helping people grow is frankly one of the responsibilities of a good leader. And sometimes people get in their own way. And whether it's that they're not willing to do the things that they need to do for themselves. Now, if they're not doing their job for the organization and for the team, that's a whole separate discussion, right? You could still try to. It's like having a family, or having a child. They may not do everything the way you want to do it, but you still love them. You still want to help them, and hopefully you get them doing the right things. But at the end of the day, I think you still try to help them until there's a point where they're just not willing to be, do what was required of them by the organization.
Okay. Let's see what else I have. So you retired early. What habits or principles helped you to make that possible?
I think do having a professional goals and objectives, and particularly around growing and taking on more responsibility. If you do that, oftentimes that comes with, if you do a good job, with other rewards and both professional satisfaction and financial. If you decide to just keep doing the same thing every day, and you go to the factory line, just doing running the same machine the same way every day, you're not going to progress. And so looking for those opportunities to take on more responsibility, I think is a key part.
So kind of raising your hand, if you will, and asking and saying, what is it that I can do versus just
That
being quiet and
that
not asking.
sometimes, or just doing it, right? And I go, oh, Spencer just did that. That's pretty cool. We should give him this opportunity over here. And so sometimes is you can ask and they might give you something, or you can just look for opportunities and just go do it.
Even if it's going to happen later on. Meaning, even if you're going to be asked to do it later on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even better, things that no other people want to do. Other people are like, I don't want to work that weekend shift. Well, go do it. Then they go, oh, okay. You're really being helpful. We actually have a need here. You took care of it and you did a great job at it. Okay. We have this other need over here. Would you be willing to do it? Now, you have to balance to make sure you're not taken advantage of. But oftentimes doing things that are needed and doing it well gets you credibility. And when you have credibility, you go to top of mind when they're looking for people that they can trust to do a good job on something else.
Especially if it's a matter of keeping people or letting off people or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, when you're, it happens. It happens in business cycles, happens in company cycles. At the end of the day, if you were the boss and you're deciding you have, 5 people and you have to let one of them go, are you going to let your best person go?
Probably not.
Probably not. You're gonna go the person who wasn't as reliable. They might still be all good because it's a relative thing, but they weren't as good in terms of, either the deliverables of their work or how they interact with the customers or how they interact with each other. Sometimes it's really too bad because it's a phenomenal employee and that's just the breaks. But more often than not, it's an opportunity to say, this person has been doing enough, but really wasn't that good. And that's that's the person who unfortunately gets selected.
Now, is there any um, habits or things that worked well versus um, other people or whatever it may be?
Again, it's actually not rocket science. It's just understand what the boss wants to get done, do it right, and do it on time. If you do that, they're thrilled to death. And because they don't want to be worrying about, is this done right? Or did it get done? If they can count on you and you can be trustworthy, and that's a really important trust, if they trust you, you're in a good spot.
because they know that you're gonna do it
You're going to
more
do
than
it and you're going to do it well. You're going to do it right. And they got other things to think about and worry about. And if they can count on you, that really puts you already in the top 10, 20% of team members.
because it's knowing that you can keep your word, if you will, and follow through with what you're gonna
Yeah, and sometimes you don't know everything. So you might have, and don't be afraid to go, I just want to give you an update as what we're doing, or I'm thinking of doing it this way, but I'm not exactly, do you think this is right? So doesn't mean just go off and try to figure it out on your own. Part of being trustworthy is if you don't know exactly what you're doing, you might go and double check it, get some extra, advice or help along the way, rather than waiting too long and go, whoops, we ended up in the wrong spot.
and then it's too late.
It's too late.
My next question is, you've lived an intentional lifestyle, no clutter, buying quality over quantity. What shaped that mindset?
So I would probably say it a different way, which is be intentional with what you're doing. So, you mentioned the quality versus quantity.
Correct.
Just be thoughtful about what you're doing. Some people just go off and do things because of an impulse, or that's what everyone else is doing. Do I really need to have that latest pair of sneakers because everyone else has got one? Well, maybe you might sit there and go, you know what? I've been saving up. That will really make me happy. I'm going to do it. But too often people just go and do it without thinking about it and go, instead of spending that money on that shoes, I could save it up and, maybe go for a weekend getaway somewhere. And I would prefer that. I think you still get to make whatever adjustments you want, but just do it because you've been thoughtful about it and it's what you really want, not just, a mindless, following through. And I think too many people just do it without thinking.
Is it because people have shiny object syndrome?
That sometimes, but sometimes that shiny object is cool. Just be thoughtful about, is that really what I want, whether it's spending money or spending time? If you want to just sit around on your front porch and look at people walk their dog, that's fine. There is nothing wrong with that if that's what you really want to do. And some people, that's makes them happy. Okay, then do that. But you don't want to just go, I just spent 4 hours looking at, YouTube videos. I learned about something I really cared about, whether astronomy or business or, Persian history. If it's what you want to do and you're intentional about it, people say, no, I just spent 4 hours on YouTube. That actually might be the best use of your time. I think just be intentional about it.
Now, let's say you're buying a car and you're comparing the 2025 model to, let's say, a 2011 model.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say, um, I'm sure a lot of people know, the minute you drive the car off the lot, ROI just goes down.
Now, I heard, you lose 20 to 30% depreciation.
Correct. Well, versus if you buy the older car that's already, let's say it's used.
I think it all depends, right? So let's look at both extremes and then maybe something in the middle. So if you buy that brand new car, if that's really, really what you want,
Correct.
if you keep it and drive it for the next 10 years, do you think it's really going to make a difference whether you paid 60,000 or 45,000? Yeah, actually 15,000 invested can make a difference. But if it really made you happy, okay, there's some value to that. Now let's take the other one. You can say I can buy that older car a lot cheaper. What happens if 3 months later you have a brand new carburetor and a whole new suspension, and next thing you know, you just thought you were saving money, but you're like, oh, geez, I'm actually spent more money on an older car than if I'd done something. Maybe there's a balance. Maybe there's like, well, maybe I'll buy a car that's a year or two old that has low mileage. So I'll get a little bit cheaper price, but it's pretty close to still being kind of new. So I get the benefits. I think you need to figure out where you fit. But if all you can afford is the old one, that might have to be your solution too. And you have to take the risk. So I think it all depends on what your situation is.
And even if it happens with the newer car, meaning the same thing that would have happened if had you bought the older car happens to the newer car
Well,
where
you
it
might,
breaks down or
but
parts that
hopefully
you didn't
it's still
expect.
under warranty.
Is
Sometimes things just happen in life. You back up and you didn't see that pole there and you just put a big old dent in your fender. Stuff happens. So I don't think you can. While I say you should think through and make a decision, a thoughtful decision, you can't also worry about every little possibility. You just get stuck in life, and I don't think that's a good way either.
because it's over
Yeah,
stimulation.
you just freeze. That's no. You got to make your decision, the best decision you can with the information you have, and just move on.
Okay. How did your upbringing influence your relationship with money?
So, grew up in a very modest family, financial environment. My father, through his approach, we used to, clip coupons and use that at the grocery store to buy things and, to go out to eat. I think how I've interpreted that and applied it to myself is I don't like to waste money. I don't mind spending money. If there's something that it might be expensive, but I know that I'm willing to spend that money for that very particular reason. What I don't like doing is like, why am I wasting money on something I really don't need or want? I don't do that. And so I'll spend the money on the things that I really want and not spend money on things that I really don't want, or spend as little as I have to on things that I really don't want.
So kind of what I'm hearing is not spending money on things just to spend money.
Right.
Meaning, like, let's say you have $900 in your bank account, you're not going to want to go, well, that 900 in my bank account, so let me go buy the newest phone or the newest headphones or whatever it is, not have any, just to not worry about the money.
Yeah, well, I think a little differently is if some people will spend extra money for a certain brand. If it's important to me, I'll do it. If it's not important to me, I'm like, why should I do that? I'll buy the thing that's just good enough, and I'll be happy and save that money and go spend that money on something I want to. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Now, is a lot of it understanding what is really worth it? Like, let's say you're shopping one week and you buy bread or whatever it is, and then you go to work and you either forget to pack your lunch or whatever it is, and you kind of go, do I buy lunch or do I pack a lunch? Meaning, do you think about it and how am I smart with purchasing everything at once, or is it kind of as it comes about, if you will?
You know, an example would be you go out to eat. I'll order a Diet Coke, even though it might be, $3.50 for a Diet Coke, knowing full well, right? Syrup in the water in the cup might cost them 50 cents, but I really want that Diet Coke to go with my burger. I'll spend the money. So I know that it's probably not the best deal. I know that they're getting good margins on it. But for me, it was something that I thought was worth it. Whereas, vice versa, I might be at home and decide on, say I'm cooking. I will actually go get a high end steak, to cook, because I know that it's going to be uh great for me. But I might not go to Ruth's Chris and spend 5 times as much for the exact same steak that I can make at home. So I'm still getting the benefit. It's just when I think about the trade off, is it really worth it or not to me?
That's kind of comparing the two and seeing what wor- what what's the best option, if you will.
I think the economic term is utility, which is for what you're spending or the value from your perspective that you're getting. And if I think it's making me happy and achieving something I want, I'll do it. But I think too many people go off and just do things without thinking about, is that really worth it?
So there's kind of not that follow through, if you will, for fully understanding it. It's just
Yeah.
doing it right away.
Well, some people go get that daily Starbucks. And why? Because it's on the way to work and that's their habit. I just want them to think about is, did you think that that $6 coffee 5 days a week, go to work, I don't know, 200 days a year, is that really, did you need it every day? Or was it better if you just did it as a treat?
Which makes sense. Let me see what my next question is. What practical financial advice would you give someone in their early 20s?
Actually, it's a very straightforward answer. Max out your 401k at work. Just absolutely get that going. And then set aside, because you can also do an IRA, do that as well. And while it seems painful and you might not have a lot of money left over to do other things you want, by getting started when you're young, when you're 40, 50, 60, you will thank yourself. And that's probably the biggest thing is get started on those savings. But why the 401k is so even the most important one is because oftentimes employers will match some amount of that. That's instant return and that you get to keep and grow. So that is one of the biggest benefits. And if you don't take advantage of that, I think you're really missing out.
And then what about investing like on a month-to-month basis, or should it just be like in the 401k or Roth IRA?
Well, if you do, oftentimes the 401k, they just pull it straight out of your paycheck every 2 weeks. And that's actually a good way to do it because then you don't have to think about having to contribute. It just, when you get your check and or what the amount that shows in your bank, it's already taken out. That's actually sometimes an easier way to deal with it. And then for the IRA, you do have to write a check periodically. So whether you do it every month or you do it once a year, I think the most important thing is you actually do it. So whatever works for you is great. But what I love about the 401k is it's somewhat a set it and forget it.
Well, I think kind of what I was asking in addition to those two, what about investing in the stocks? Meaning those two are already your employer kind of
Mm.
does the reimbursement. But what about if you take, let's say, $100 and
Well, all of
set
those,
it right?
all of those have different investment options. So whether it's your IRA or your 401k, you can invest it in this mutual fund or this index fund. I would actually tend towards, especially in their 20s, go be in all stocks because over time, it's shown that that's going to give you a higher return than bonds or sticking into the bank account. And so I would do stocks and I would probably lean towards what they call the aggressive portfolio, which is high growth stocks. In other words, rather than investing in ExxonMobil, I would invest in NVIDIA. And people would say, well, geez, NVIDIA is so highly valued right now and it's already grown so much. But when I think about 20 or 30 years from now, which one's going to be worth more? I would think that NVIDIA's got a better chance to continue to grow than an oil company. But if you even step back and do it differently, which is I'm going to not just invest in one stock, but I'm going to invest in a basket of stocks, maybe a mutual fund that's focused on AI. I don't know which winner company is going to be the winner, do better than the other, but I know that AI is going to be a bigger thing 20 years from now than it is today, or robotics. Here, I'm going to invest in this basket of robotic stocks. Okay. I would, especially when you're younger, go for that. You might be wrong, but I think that your probability of making more money by investing in those, call it high growth stocks, you have a much better chance. And you're not going to need the money. By definition, it's your retirement money and you can't touch it until you're 65. So go ahead and let the money work for you.
What about like if you were to buy a rental property and have tenants?
So some people historically have used that and that's called passive income. And I think passive income is phenomenal, but there's different ways of going about it. So here's the challenge. You go buy that property You put some money down, you have to probably take out a mortgage. Okay. And then what happens if you get tenants that get laid off and can't pay you?
They're behind on their payments.
Yet you still have to pay the bank the mortgage. You still have to pay the government the real estate taxes. So now that money you were counting on as rent isn't there anymore. You have these other financial headaches you have to deal with. And it's not nice, but then you have to try to, move them out of your property and get somebody who's going to pay you. But that's not an easy thing to do either. There's a whole process of that. And so you can lose months and months and months of this rent you were counting on. Okay. And then what about that call at 2 in the morning because the water heater exploded? Okay. Well, you're the owner. The renter's not, they're expecting the water heater to work. So now you have to take care of calling the plumber to come in. And so there's a lot of headaches that you have to deal with. So you just have to understand, is the trade-off worth it? Now, there's ways to invest in real estate where you pool with a bunch of other people and there's these public versions called REITs. There's also private equity versions. They call it multifamily investments. Think of it as they buy a condominium, or an apartment building, and you own a part of that apartment building, but they manage it, right? They deal with it. And if one renter doesn't pay their rent, the other 99 are. And so, yeah, and everyone takes a hit, but you only take a 1% hit. Whereas everybody else, if you own only that one property, it's all on you. So there's different ways of going about it. And I do think passive income is a great add to your daily employment, but I just would caution what other bells and whistles are going to come with it, particularly if you own it yourself directly.
Well, I think why I was asking is because sometimes you'll spread yourself too thin. You'll not diversify in what you're investing in. And then
Hmm.
you go, I should have invested in a property or I should have invested in a mutual fund, but I didn't. Let's say you only have a Roth IRA or a
Hmm.
401k.
Well, I
And
think
then it's only like two places where your money's going versus expanding it and allowing it to go into different ways, if you will.
so. I think you've hit on one of the most important things, which is diversification. But I think you can diversify yourself even within. There's certain asset classes that, for instance, a mutual fund. By definition, a mutual fund is diversified because they've invested in a whole number of companies. But they might only be, like we talked about, they might just be biotech companies. But all you got to do is read, what is that mutual fund focused in on? You just pick a mutual fund that says, I'm going to invest in mid-cap US companies. Okay. That's more diversified than just the one that focused on biotech. But you might say, I actually think that South America and Asia is going to be growing faster in the United States. Okay, fine. Then pick a mutual fund that is more international or has a global balance. So I think you can get diversified without having to look at something totally different. Now, what you're talking about, I think, is asset classes where you say, okay, stocks is one thing, but there's these other asset classes that I think are going to do well. They could be things like precious metals, gold, copper, silver. Might be crypto, right?
Correct.
It could be real estate. It could be venture capital. Those are all different asset classes. I just think you need to start somewhere, right? Start with the basics of diversified stock indexes or mutual funds, and then maybe add one in a second or third if you want. But the key to diversification is don't put all your eggs in one basket. And some are riskier than others. If you bought crypto, if you bought Bitcoin when it was 19,000, you'd be really happy. If you bought it when it was 120,000, you'd be really unhappy. Yeah. But if you did a small portion over there, that's diversification. Um, but I think you still need to fundamentally say, is that a good investment? Right? Because just saying, well, I lost 5%, that's no big deal. I only lost 5%. Well, it better if you didn't lose the 5%. So just doing nothing would have been better.
Correct.
So I think you need to be thoughtful about where you decide to invest your capital.
I think kind of why I was asking is because it's better to have a lot of options than to just have one or two options and not have things that you can choose from than just being like limited.
I'd
If
rather
that makes sense.
I'd rather be limited with a few really good choices than having a lot of choices that include bad things. Back to what you said, I would go for quality over quantity. And I think that applies here too. Try to find really solid investments run by solid people or groups who you believe know what they're doing. And that's better than just throwing, going buying essentially lottery tickets and seeing whether you won the lottery last night or not.
So kind of hedging your bets or your risks, if you will, a little bit.
Yeah. But everyone's nobody's perfect all the time. So that's why even if you really think this is a really great investment, don't put all your money in that because they might say, well, and it will only go bad if this happened. Well, what happens if that happens? Then you're out of luck. Maybe split it up and put a quarter here, a quarter there, a quarter there, and a quarter there. So if it went really bad, yeah, that sucks. But I didn't get entirely wiped out.
That way it's kind of it won't wipe you out as a whole.
Right.
So it's like let's say it only wipes out 10% and the rest of the 90 is still afloat.
And that's what you want to be careful about is sure they might turn out to be a huge winner and you go, shoot, if I put all my money into Apple when they launched the iPhone, I'd be worth 15 times my money. Well, yeah, you're right. But what happens if it didn't work out?
Lost
That
all your
wouldn't be
money.
so good. I think you don't want to spread it too thin because then if you were right about Apple, I only bought one share. I should have bought 100 shares. You won't benefit from good decisions if you spread yourself too thin, but you don't want to concentrate too much so that if the downside happens, you really get hurt.
How has your definition of success changed since retiring?
So I think when I was working, it was about professional success and trying to, whether it's working for a company, trying to help our stock price get as high as it can. That was one definition of success that I had. The other one was because we did a lot of acquisitions,
Okay.
doing good acquisitions, I think was a definition of my success. What has changed now is maybe trying to take my experience, good and bad, and just share it with people who haven't been in that position yet. And it's going to be a different world. The world that of 10, 15, 20 years from now is going to be very different from the world that I had 10, 15, 20 years ago. But there's still some fundamental truths and lessons learned that may apply. And the way I approach it is I'd like to share it with people. And if they find one thing or two things that they really can take and do something with, great. If they don't want to do any of it, that's their choice too. Or if they learn more things, that's fine. But I at least want to share it with them and then let them decide how should they apply that to themselves.
So it's more of giving them the option to choose what to do versus not at all.
Well, sometimes, again, when I was growing up, we didn't have there was no of these podcasts where you can read a book, but I wasn't really interested in reading a 300 self-improvement book. That just wasn't my shtick. But if someone could have told me some things along the way, that might have avoided some problems. Not that I had a lot of problems. And I think I kind of got lucky and my gut did help me make the right decisions in most cases. But I also had good mentors that I could go get advice from and perspective from. This is a way to get an added mentor without having to put in a lot of effort.
Now, how do you think that finding mentors and picking mentors is important, but also how does it properly work, if you will?
So a lot of times, if you're lucky, it's a boss, right? Because the boss knows you, interacts with you regularly, and cares about your success. And that's that's some good elements of mentor that's going to help you. If someone doesn't really know you or doesn't interact with you very often, you're not going to get as much benefit out of that. So I would start with bosses, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be, it could even be friends, or it could be professors, or it could be someone who's in your, you know, and so I think just being thoughtful about, there's somebody that I think can, I can learn from, and it can help me getting to know them better. And if they have the time and energy and inclination, they're going to look for ways to help you. Getting a little extra help along the way, uh, I think is a very important element to being successful. Nobody does it on their own. All along the way, everybody's gotten help from somebody.
Even if it takes a while, or
Certainly.
even if it involves ego sometimes.
Well, you hear about all these entrepreneurs that, they failed at this company and they failed starting this company, but it was the fourth company that turned out to be the right one, and they're wildly successful. And so sometimes it's perseverance and it takes time.
Sometimes it's a lot of waiting and not wanting to give up right away, or whatever it may be.
It's not, I don't think it's a giving up thing. I think it's just continuing to put forth the effort and the extra effort. Because if you just decide to just do the bare minimum, you're not going to get there. You're going to get the results about what you put into it. But if you really want something special, you have to do more. You have to, whether it's on your own startup company, or it's within a corporation or any organization, you just have to do more than what's expected. Then that's going to help you move forward.
So it kind of helps you to stand out a little bit.
Yeah. Again, you just think about, if you were the boss, are you going to promote the people who put forth the extra effort, or someone who just does whatever they're needed to do and check the box?
And it puts most the fourth or foremost effort.
Yeah. It's very straightforward, but a lot of people don't do that. And that's where I think the differentiator is. Somebody who I used to have on my keyboard when I was an investment banker. It may seem a little silly now, but it said, I wrote a little note. It said, "Go hard or go home," which is, put forth 100% effort or go. And sometimes going home was the right thing to do. You needed a break, or you wanted to spend time with your family, or you had other obligations. But I just made it. If I was there, I wasn't just going to waste time. I was actually going to make the best use of the time in the office. Or if I wasn't really putting forth all the effort, actually, I'll put forth all the effort doing something else.
So kind of shifting your focus and being diligent about it.
Again, just spending the time thoughtfully, intentionally, and not just wasting it.
What motivates you now that you're retired?
Again, I think it's that giving back. People use the term "pay it forward." I think that gives me some purpose, and I think having purpose is key. If you don't have purpose, then every day is just gonna be the same thing, and you're not gonna get any fulfillment. And so, I think for me, it's in looking for ways, whether it's in educational organizations I'm involved in, or the community, or just friends and family. That gives you purpose, and so that's what I like to do.
Now, is it just because of it's a generous thing to do, or is it kind of more of a helping to help other people succeed, if you
I
will?
think I think it's in between. I think it is thinking of the world as more than just yourself. If you think of it as just yourself, I think you're missing out. But if you live your life entirely for other people, I don't think that's good either. So I think it's you got to have a balance. But what I do is I reach out with friends sometimes I haven't talked to in decades, and go to lunch or dinner or coffee. That helps uh, connect with people, and sometimes they're happy to, like, wow, I haven't seen you, we haven't talked in a super long time, and it makes their day. But I also will tell you, and it absolutely makes my day. because these are people that I've known, but I haven't talked to in a long time. But also that you have other people that, whether again, family or friends, I think connection is important. Sometimes just send that email or pick up that phone or organize that group dinner. That for me is pretty fulfilling.
What's something you think people waste too much time or money on?
So on the time thing, I actually think it's news. People spend too much time learning about something that's happening in Oregon. We're in Maryland right now.
No,
I
we
live in
are.
Florida. I'm not planning on being in Oregon. Maybe that's good just to be, people like to say, I want to be aware of what's going on. That's fine. But that shouldn't take a lot of your time. And you shouldn't have to spend, research or reading or watching videos about something that you really don't have any effect over. So I would rather spend my time on things that I can have an impact on, whether it's local community, family, friends, myself. But if I can't have an effect on it, by definition, it might be, again, it's good to be aware, but I think people dwell on stuff and waste a lot of time worrying about stuff that they have no ability to impact.
So it's more of a distraction than not a momentum impactor, a forwarder, if you will. Meaning it doesn't help get things done. It's kind of there to distract you and to not help you get things done that
It's
you need to
almost,
get done.
I think I've seen it in Buddhist philosophy, which is control the things you control and don't worry about the things you can't control. By definition, you can't control it. So don't waste time, energy, anxiety. I think people just worry about stuff they have no impact on. So why worry?
And do you think that that's kind of prevalent now, or do you think it's just as a whole?
I think it's much more prevalent now. Growing up, if there was a plane crash in India, I would read it in the paper the next day. Now, something happens and we'll get an alert in 20 seconds. And yeah, I really feel bad for the people on the plane crash in India, but I'm not going to, there's not a lot I can do about it. And I think the instantaneous information you have nowadays, I'm not sure that's necessarily a good thing.
And do you think that it's kind of not fulfilling, if you will? Meaning it doesn't help people kind of understand things better. It's kind of there to get their attention and then not.
Well, I think news as a business is not interested in talking about, how wonderful the apple crop is in the state of Washington. No one wants to watch anything about that. They only want to watch things that are sensational and news and controversial. And I don't think that's good. I really don't.
Well, meaning that people turn on the news or whatever it is when they're not really there's not a lot of thought into it, meaning they just turn it on to turn it on and whatever story is there catches their attention and then that's what shifts their focus to, let's say it's a plane crash or meaning
I
it's not intentional, it's just done on a
I
routine
think it's
basis.
something a little different. It's almost people are looking to have bad stuff. And what I mean by that is I don't think people look at the news anymore and it's just background and it catches their attention. People actually go to websites, they go to Facebook pages, they go to things that almost reinforce their view of the world, whatever that is. And again, I think people will feed that with sensationalism and negativity and us versus them, whatever side you're on. And so I think people proactively actually go to social media, for example, and just reinforce that. And I think that's unfortunate. I wish it was, people say, why can't we just all get along? I actually would like that. You have your view, which is different from their view, which is different from their view, and which is different from my view. And I disagree with it, but it's your view. I don't have to agree with it, but I'm also not going to force what I think on you.
Now, do you think that kind of what you just said, they go on whatever platform, but it's not that it's gratification, but more of that it's kind of there to say, here's my point and here's my cohort or people
Hmm.
that are there to back me up and to prove my point, if you will.
Yes, but also again, I think I actually think of it as it's a stimulant. People go, just like you would get coffee and have caffeine. I think people do use social media sometimes just to get a stimulant in their life. Having a coffee every once in a while is not a problem, but if you become addicted to it and it defines who you are and you can't live without it, I think that's a sign of something that's not so good.
Now, do you see it as kind of, I mean, obviously it is a problem, but you see it as kind of, it's hard to say it, but obviously it's people's hard work and their ideas and what they've done over the course of, let's say, 10 to 15 years, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or whatever it is that people see as a distraction.
Well, I think creating content, I think it depends on the content. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful content out there. And I think frankly that the content that people, you can look at a YouTube video and say this was posted 2 years ago or 8 years ago. And if you're looking at it right then and there, actually, I think that's good content because stood the test of time. Too much of it is just in the moment. People are not going to go back and look at that content years from now. But at the moment, it got someone's attention. I actually think that's generally not good content. And so um, I have a lot of respect for the content creators who build things that was real knowledge or really informative or insightful. That's great. It's the sensationalism that I don't like.
Well, is it the fact that it's done just to have a positivity hype, if you will, meaning I have to check whatever it is 24/7, 365 days a year because of whether it's a friend group or whether it's the latest influencer online is posting a clothing drop or whatever it is because of the company created whatever it is, whatever app it is. And so you as the, say, the 20-year-old individual
Hmm.
grew up using the algorithm. And so now you're kind of like, if I don't go on this platform, then it's kind of as if you're missing out on whatever new or current thing is happening, if you will.
Again, I think everything in balance is appropriate. Again, there's nothing wrong with saying, I want to spend some time going online and looking at either the influencer or the friend group. But if you're spending all your time on there, I think that's probably not so good. But also, I think it really depends on what you're spending your time on. If it's actually something that you get enjoyment out of and happiness out of, great. I caution when I think about people and what I worry about is that they're seeing stuff that is just, again, they can't do anything about. It's all negative and it's there to create divisiveness. And I think that's unfortunate
And you think that that's kind of intentional in a way?
because, yes, because it gets views and it gets reactions. Yes. So I'm not sure it's the chicken or the egg, right? But we do know that those do match up. And that's what I think is unfortunate.
And do you think that there's better alternatives than what's kind of there? Meaning, obviously, cycles of depression, but meaning better things than causing bad habits or whatever it is. If you,
I think you have to be conscious about what you're doing. Just like if I eat a gallon of ice cream every day, that's probably not so good for you. And so if you think about it, you might go, well, I don't want to do that. The problem is I think there's certain things that people just don't think about. They just do it and they don't do it in moderation. And that's where I think it can be harmful.
do you think that part of it is a personal reflection, if you will? Meaning, it's people looking at other people who either have or are doing what they want, but they're not content with where they are currently or whatever it is.
I think people say that. They say you can, um, by seeing people post online, they only post the good stuff. They don't post the bad stuff. And they go, I want what they have and their life is so good. First of all, everyone has not good things going on in their life. It could be emotional, it could be professional, it could be health wise, it could be any number of things. So, and you don't know about that. I think you just have to step back and go, hey, even the most powerful people or most famous people in the world, some of their lives are not actually that enjoyable. They have other problems that you just don't really know about. But I think I think it is overemphasized to say, "Oh, you really it's bad for you to see all the good, things." Well, if, a friend of mine's child's, got the lead role in a musical, that's nice. I wanna know that, right? And I wanna be happy for them. So I think there isn't Spencer, you went and bought, again, you talked about cars. If you got a car that you've been saving up for the last 3 years and you got it, I'm happy for you. I'd like to see that you're driving that car. And so I think that's a throwaway comment when people say, "Oh, you shouldn't be on social media because you're gonna get depressed because you see what other people you want what they have." Well, I think that says more about the person than the actual content of the social media. If you can be happy now, if you are inherently jealous of what other people have, what the neighbor has, or other things, okay, yeah, I think you're gonna reinforce that problem. But if you are happy for others and want to be supportive of others, I think you're going to do just fine.
I think that, at least in my opinion, that it's mostly seen as a negative and that it's more of a comparison tool for seeing you as the individual, but also the people on the platform and what content they post and comparing and saying, well, this is me and this is the other person. They have X, Y, and Z, and I have X, Y, and Z. And that the two don't correlate or whatever it is. And then not being happy that you have whatever it is and that the other person has whatever it is, whether it's a jet or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think the most, you've heard this in philosophy, know thyself. And I think that's important. If you think you're going to get impacted negatively by other people's social media posts, then just avoid it. For me, I talked earlier about divisiveness in the news. I really just don't watch the news as much as I used to intentionally. And sure, someone might say, "Hey, did you hear about this?" I'm like, "No, I didn't." And maybe that's not necessarily a good thing because it is an important event or something that happened. But for me personally, I'm happier not knowing about. Again, most of the time they're all negative stories, not positive.
So it's more of kind of a signal to noise approach, if you will, for what really has to get done versus what is just distractions that aren't going to help you get
Yeah,
anything done.
here's an example that just popped in my head. The British royalty. I don't really care about the British royalty. I mean, some of them seem like nice people. Some of them seem like not nice people. But whatever the latest drama that's going on there, I'm not British. I'm not royalty. They haven't called me in a while. They haven't invited me over for tea, so I'm not going to worry about it. But there's people that really want to know everything that's going on, or the news that the news will publish some article about the latest twist and turn. Great, but it's not for me.
If you will. It's more of a charade, and it's not trying to do their job effective.
Well, actually, I think they are trying to do their job. It's just they have both sides, or in a multi-party government, there's many different views. So what I think it is they're all trying to have their view be the one that is followed. And part of the way to do that is to attack everybody else's view, because it's not my view and mine's the right one and yours is the wrong one. So I'm going to show all the wrong things about you. So I think it is intentional and it's the strategy, but I don't have to agree with it. I don't like it. I would rather us be more civil and at least be respectful that, again, I don't agree with you, but I'm not going to make you agree with me. I'm going to try to maybe convince you. But at the end of the day, if that's the way you decide, that's the way you decide. That's the beauty of being an individual and having human and having human rights, is the ability to decide how you want to decide things, not being told how to decide things.
And I think that that's also, it can get pushed upon people, if you will, meaning seeing it as a negative connotation for why don't you think X, Y, and Z reason there. Whatever it is, meaning it's like it's using it as leverage or as a negative versus just acknowledging it for what it is.
No, it's back to the old adage, I'm right, you're wrong. Well, wait a second. Who's to say you might be right? You might be, but you may not be. And you know what? As long as you're not hurting other people for yourself because I care about you, you're entitled to your opinion. And that's all it is. It's not a fact. It's your opinion. Okay. And that's what makes us human. Again, back to the early conversation, AI. Well, you can have someone else make the decision for you, but I would rather every individual be able to make their own decisions.
Even if it's from another individual's perspective that is, higher or whatever it is.
Being different isn't necessarily wrong. They may have a different perspective, a different cultural background, but why does you pick chocolate and the other person picks vanilla? Doesn't mean you're right or wrong. It's just that you have a different perspective. You have a different opinion. You have a different choice. I'd like to respect that.
And you think that it's not getting or doing what it should be. People are respecting other people's choices. That are their opinions. What was one of the toughest challenges in your career and how did you overcome it?
Let's see. I would say the challenge is balancing work and family. In hindsight, I think there's probably things I could have had more balance than I did at the time. And so, again, there's no book that says, here's how to run your life. And if you just follow this owner's manual, it's going to turn out
Like
right.
how to drive a car or how to ride a bike.
Yes. Or raising kids or, how to be a good friend. You do the best you can along the way. And there's things you might twist and do a little differently. But I think having that balance is something that is the biggest challenge. And sometimes you have to do what you have to do for work. There's a very major project that has to happen by the end of the month. If you were in movie making, the movie is going to be shown on November 25th. You got to have the movie done. And so sometimes you have to do what you want to do. But I think you got to be mindful and try to balance and know that there's more to life than just work.
And do you think that it's more one than the other? Because a lot of people say you have to have this equal work-life balance, which I know a
Yeah.
lot of people overshadow it and say that's not really, it can't really happen.
I think I don't like the term equal because it isn't equal. I think there's cycles. There's times where work is more important, and there's times where things outside of work are more important. And so I think it evolves or shifts over time. What I also think is that I think you got to figure out sometimes you do the work to get things that you can have the ability to do other things besides work. When people talk about work to live or live to work, and I think that's interesting. But what would be wonderful is if you could find a career, a profession, a job that you enjoy doing. That even if you weren't, let me say again, you are probably going to get paid something,
Correct.
right? But you're not doing it just for the money. In fact, if you're doing it just for the money,
It's not probably
get out, go do something else. Life's too short. So hopefully you find something that you enjoy doing, you're good at doing, and you get compensated appropriately for being good at what you do. Then is that really work or is that also living? I think you can, there's people that artists, some of them love what they're doing and they get paid pretty well doing it. If you could find that, that's great.
should be one over the opposite or over the other, meaning you should do what you enjoy doing and the money will follow versus doing what
Sometimes
you
the money
absolutely
won't.
don't want to do.
Sometimes the money won't follow. Some people, educate teachers. I could never be a kindergarten teacher ever. But there's people that they get such reward, and sometimes it could be a challenging day. Kids screaming or doing something they're not supposed to be doing and not listening. But overall, I think teachers do it because they feel like they're doing something bigger and better. And I could tell you, there's teachers in my life that really helped positively impact me. A lot of them probably passed by now, but I can certainly tell you that they they lived a life that made an impact, and I'm thankful for that.
And do you think that that's better than just saying I'm doing a job just to get paid?
Well, certainly it is better than doing a job that get paid, but sometimes you can also find a job that pays well that you also like doing. Airline pilots, I think that's a pretty good profession from what I understand. And there's people, I'm sure you're away from family at times that you don't want to be, but there's people that love being 30,000 feet up in the air, and good for them.
Well, meaning, like, let's say I'm an artist or
Hmm.
I'm a race car driver
Hmm.
or whatever it is, and I enjoy doing it versus I don't enjoy what I do and I absolutely hate it. But going back to what I was saying about the one, I enjoy what I do and I don't really care how much I make. I enjoy doing it because it's what I want to do and it makes me happy. Do you think that that's
You still have responsibility,
well,
unfortunately.
correct.
Yeah. So I think it has to be good enough. All right. Or make it a hobby, and then you can drive around the racetrack all you want, but you're not counting on paying the mortgage from that. So sometimes you might have to say, I really like doing something, but I actually have to have responsibilities in life. But certainly if you're just doing it and you hate it, maybe it's temporary. You're doing it for the summer just to have spending money or to get that internship, check the box on your resume. Okay. If it's got a defined period of time and not long, sometimes you just, again, do what you need to do. But if it's a longer term item, it's time to transition to something else.
Versus just having it being like a negative burden, if you will.
Well, that's no way to live. And you don't know in this world when your time comes. So at least for the time that you're doing it, make it purposeful. And it's not every day is not going to be a happy day. I guarantee you that. But generally speaking, you want to be able to look back and go, you know what? I lived a good life.
And that's kind of the important part of it, if you will.
And the good life isn't looking in the garage and seeing a Ferrari. A good life is much more meaningful than that. In other words, did you have experiences that you wanted to experience? Did you build relationships that you very mutual relationships, right? Not just for you, but were you impactful on other people? And then were you impactful on people that had no idea who you were on the greater society or the organization or did you do something? Again, the teachers may not remember my name. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But I could tell you they did make an impact.
For someone entering tech or finance today, what is the biggest mistake they should avoid making?
I want to say not being persistent because and it's not just tech or finance. It's really anything that is selective. Can you or do you put forth the educational effort to know it? Did you put forth the education or the effort to get to know the people and build relationships? That's, I think, you know, the biggest mistake to avoid is just having it come to you because it's not. You're going to have to put forth the effort and you're going to have to look for create those opportunities for yourself.
So you're gonna have to get at it versus the opposite.
Go on offense. If you just sit around on defense and try to prevent the other team from scoring, you're going to lose. The only way to win the game is to go on offense. And I define winning the game as getting what you want. And that's going to be different from every individual. Some people may want to be a journalist. Great. But if you just sit around, you're not going to get published in the New York Times. You're going to have to go, you know, build a reputation and create content that deserves to be published.
Kind of getting a foot in the door, if you will.
Fitting your door is part of it. If they don't know who you are, you're not going to be given an opportunity to show what you can do.
Which is important in
Mhm.
either giving a chance or whatever it is.
I sometimes suggest to people, be at headquarters of a company because then you have a chance for people who are decision makers to get to know who you are. And chances are they're not going to call someone up and say, hey, there's somebody in the Milwaukee office. Let's give that to them. It's more like Spencer just he does a great job around here. Let's give him this chance. And because they again, out of sight, out of mind, there's an inverse to that, which is if you're there, you're present, and they know who you are, chances are you're going to be the go-to person.
versus if you weren't.
They don't know who you are. You might be wonderful. If they don't know who you are, they're not going to be able to call you up to the big leagues.
My next question is, so the last guest who was on this podcast said, what are your life goals?
So, I would say I've achieved a lot of the life goals, and it's along the lines of being impactful, whether it's impactful to the companies or organizations you're with. I think I've been able to do that. Impactful with the family and friends and overall society. Now, will anyone really remember me 100 years from now? No, they won't. Probably not even 30 years from now, but at least I know for the time that I've been here, I think I will have hopefully positively impacted people and people that are important to me.
Now, if you could ask the next guest one question without knowing who the person is, what would that question be?
I'm a big fan of travel. That's one of my passions, especially international travel. So the question I would probably ask him is, name 3 international travel destinations you'd recommend people go to.
Regardless of if it's well known or
Yeah.
just that.
In fact, sometimes the best places are not well known. The hidden beauty of the Great Barrier Reef. Now that's not hidden, but a lot of people don't think about that. There may be places in the world that are relatively unknown. That'd be something to share. But there's could be great places like Italy, which everybody knows about, and I would say go to Italy. It's got great people, great food, and great historical sites.
Anything that you wish that people knew that didn't, whether it's career related or friendship related or anything else? Like that you've learned over time that's made kind of a big impact on you, if you will.
Yeah, I would say be mindful of time. When I was younger, or I was in I would call it the rat race, but when I was working really hard, I didn't think about time as a resource. And that's one thing you talked about depreciation
Right.
earlier. That is one thing for every single one of us and every one of your listeners. They're going to have less time tomorrow left than they do today. So they have a finite resources and it's going getting smaller. So use it the way you want to use it. And again, it could just be sitting under a palm tree reading a book. Fine. That's great. But when you're younger or were you really busy, that is not something I thought about. And now I do think about that more, not in a bad way, just in a conscious way.
Certain things um that people do that allow them to um get back their time, or is it kind of just working with what you have and leveraging it to the best that you can?
Well, you're never going to get back to your time.
Well, meaning like
But right.
if you're to go buy a jet and you're to go travel a lot more to do whatever it is, like something along those lines. Whatever it is.
Right. Well, I think you can be more efficient with your time, but you know, use your example, the private jet versus taking flight. Yeah, it might save you a few hours, but think about all the other things that people do in their daily lives that are just, again, wasted time. And that I think is you can make up for it. You just by doing simple stuff. Sometimes, if you're younger and you're deciding to, where are you going to get your apartment? Well, if you can get your apartment closer to where you work, that's better than having an hour and a half commute each way. Now, sure, you might argue that I can read a book or I can, go online or I can text friends or something like that. But if people step back and think about what they do within a typical day, they can easily save, quote, save half an hour at least, and you can repurpose that. Now, again, if you're using that time the way you want to, then perfect. You don't need to change a thing. But it's too often where people are doing stuff and they're not even thinking about it.
Do you think part of it is the fact that they're not fully aware of it? Let's say there's, whether it's a week or a year or a month or whatever it is, that it's the same thing over and over again,
Mm.
but not planning out your day the night before or doing anything
Again,
on autopilot.
you don't have to plan it out. All it is just don't do it out of, I use the term habit. Just don't do it because you do it. Do it because you want to do it. Notice I didn't question what you're doing. That's up to you. All I want is that you do it because you consciously did it, decided to do it, not because you just did it out of habit.
What did you learn from school and what didn't you learn from school that you learned in business?
So there's not actually a lot of direct applicability, especially what I was doing. There was at the time, and maybe they have it now, but there was no class on teaching you really how to do investment banking, how to do an M&A deal, how to work with clients. That is almost like in the old days, the blacksmith. You have the master blacksmith and the apprentice. And how the apprentice became the master is just by being around, doing it, and becoming better at it. And I think that's truly in the area that I was in, how it works. But you do learn things in school, which is how to work in groups, how to, whether you like it or not, learning content and studying for a test is a deliverable, and doing it well. That's a important skill to have, and putting forth the effort or not putting forth the effort and getting the result you get. That's that's a business takeaway. So I think there are things. Now, there are some fundamental items like financial accounting class. Certainly understanding how an income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow work and how they interact together, that's a textbook thing. And frankly, that's the better environment to learn that than being in the real world. Because frankly, it's actually pretty confusing that if you didn't have it explained to you academically, you're like, I'm not sure how this all works. But I think the keys are there are skills that you do learn in school that you can apply to the real world, but you're not going to learn it all in school. There are probably some classes that you have to take that I found out I never ever needed. Calculus, for example, I've never needed to figure out the area under a curve ever in business, and it was a required class, in the MBA program. So I think there are some things that you're expected to learn that you really aren't going to need. But there are some pretty cool things that you do learn that you get into the real world and go, oh, actually, that's kind of interesting. I'm a big fan of personality tests. There's something called, one called Myers-Briggs. And I learned about that in a management class. And uh, to this day, and probably even more recently since I've retired, I've reflected. It's actually a pretty amazing set of concepts. Myers-Briggs divided as 16 personalities, and that's your personality. And there's certain things that motivate you and things that you're not interested in. And understanding that about yourself, I think, is a big recommendation I would have for all your listeners. And then also, to the best you can understand how that applies to people around you, you actually know what really makes them tick. And that's actually kind of cool.
Some of the job of school is to set you up for a career, meaning it's to focus on what you're good at and your interest areas, if you will.
I think one of the big things you're talking about a career that's understated is the importance of internships. Internships is kind of like that part-time trial job. The company gets to know you a little bit better. You get to know them a little bit better. And if you do well, and they have a spot, they're going to hire you over somebody that they don't know. And so it's like, I want to play in the NFL. Okay, well, if you walk on and you've never played football before in your life, you're not getting a job on an NFL team. But if you did well in college and you did well in high school, then they get to see you and then they go, okay, this is the person we want. And so that's the way I think about internships. So job, at school, I think school can give you time to understand who you are and develop as a person. And you could try different clubs and you can find out different classes. Like for instance, it was school that exposed me to finance that figured out that's what I really want to do. But like I told you, there's probably a chunk of finance that I only learned because I got on the job. But school can expose you to things you haven't been exposed to. Again, whether it's in academic classes or it's in extracurricular activities. And that's a great time to explore before you're in, quote, the real world.
Well, meaning, do you think that it should focus on what you're good at and refining those so that it helps you get a job versus something that you're not very good at doing?
No, I'd rather, along the lines of what I was just saying, I'd rather it expose you to things you haven't been exposed to before and figure out, is that something I really like? Or is that something I really don't like? Because part of the journey is figuring out things you don't like. You might say, really, really don't like working outside. Okay. Well then don't become a park ranger. Okay. Or I really don't like dealing with sick people. Okay, well don't become a doctor or a nurse, right? But some people think, well, that's what I'm going to do. When I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor. Well, you may not know exactly what it is. And when you get to school, hopefully you get exposed to this is really what you do. And then you go, well, I don't really want to do that. I want to do something else. And that's still learning and growing.
How do you think that business leaders have kind of changed?
Some of the most successful entrepreneurs dropped out of college. Now, here's the thing. They didn't really drop out of Southwest Missouri State. They dropped out of Harvard or Stanford or something like that. Now, I'm not putting anything special on the school necessarily that they went to, but I think it's symbolic that they were already high achieving people. And they're like, well, getting more A's in some classes is not going to help me in what I'm trying to do, which is to build XYZ company. And so the value of staying in school wasn't going to really add to their progress. And more importantly, timing might be important. If they waited 2 more years, somebody else would have came up with that idea. So I'm not necessarily advocating dropping out of college and going start a new business but you're asking about leaders and how they're
Correct.
different. I think leaders a long time ago were people who were good at executing. I think leaders today are more impactful if they're visionaries, right? I'm actually a big fan of Elon Musk. And no matter what you think about his approach or personality or individual personal life, he has been able to make things happen that I personally never thought was possible.
Or that stalled.
I mean, I loved the space shuttle and because that was what was going on when I was younger. I never thought of an ability of a rocket to launch and then land. And then next month they launch the darn thing up again and do it for 25 times. Right. That's just, I'm like, no, that can't happen. And to make that happen in a reality, I live in Florida. Sometimes twice a day there's rocket launches. It's just fascinating to me how far it's come. And still there's more to do. But you talk about electric cars. Electric cars has been around ever since they're electric golf carts. I mean, they're just a different version of an electric car. But what he's been able to do is build a company that could do it at scale and make money. I'm not sure there's any other company that can do that. And so that required vision, but I think it also required the ability to hire talented people, provide them the resources and challenge them to say, I want you to do this. Go figure it out. And I think that ability is more than just doing it yourself or telling people how to do it. I think having the vision that says, we're going to do stuff that's never been done before and get people to believe that you can do it and then actually deliver on it. I think that's wonderful.
Do you think that having different thinkers is important as well?
One of the worst things that can happen in any organization is groupthink. And that's where you get everybody who just kind of goes along and because and they sincerely might think it's the right thing, but I don't think that's good for an organization to not be able to challenge and have different perspectives. I think you're going to be blindsided by things because you didn't have someone else in the room to go, hey, what if this happens, or have we thought about that? It might have temporary harmony, but I think in the long term, I think you need people to challenge the status quo and what the group think. And you still might go, okay, that was an interesting perspective you have there, but we're still going to go do this. Okay, cool. And by the way, the I'll call him the dissenter,
Okay.
but I don't mean that in a bad way. Once the group has decided this is what we're doing, you need to be supportive of the group or leave the group. So in other words, it's good to challenge the strategy of the team. But once the team's decision and the boss's decision's been made, I think your job is to either support it or leave.
And do you think that that's becoming a little bit more socially acceptable? Meaning people who think differently or the success and the input and output that they've achieved has been more, it's been more acceptable than it had been in the past, if you
No,
will.
I actually think what's happening is organizations are more self-selecting to have people who kind of go along with their ideas and not bringing in the people who are going to be more challenging. And I think that's a bad, like I said, in the long term, I think that's a bad thing. I think way too many people are just, asking, and hiring the people who think just like they think.
And
And I don't think that's good.
do you think that that's why there's a lot of different companies that have pushed the boundaries, if you will?
I think there's a lot of companies that have made mistakes because they are insulated in their worldview or their view of the customer or their view of the way things are going and not willing to be open-minded. And therefore they get blindsided and or the trends move in a different direction than what they thought, and that hurts them financially. And if it hurts them way too much, it can be really bad for the company.
Well, meaning that the people who think differently, they're,
Yeah, I asked that
I
a
don't.
different way.
So if you look at like Alex Karp and Richard Branson and
Mhm.
everybody who thinks in a different way, do you think that it's becoming more acceptable? Meaning that they don't think their traditional way. It's kind of outside of the box
Well, I think
with successful companies that do
right.
that.
I think those are where you see a lot of the entrepreneurs and founders and revolutionaries. They are thinking about, I'm talking about within a corporation. Too often, I don't think those people are as accepted and promoted as they should be. And frankly, I think that's some of the more successful leaders today do add people to their team that will challenge them and challenge the status quo. And that's why I think some of these leaders that you see out, leading companies out there today are doing as well as they can. Some of the old, they call them the blue bloods, aren't doing so well. It's because they haven't embraced that willingness to hear different perspectives.
Because they're kind of stuck in their ways a little bit.
Either stuck in their ways or they just don't want confrontation. Or they just want people who think the way that they think. And I think it's actually probably more the latter one nowadays, is that they just want people who think the way they think. And on whatever it is, the topic is, it's good to have diversity of thought.
Think it's going to change a little bit, or do you think it's going to be the same way that it is? Meaning that there's going to be more people who habit or whatever, and that the business world changes a little bit, or do you think it's going to be the same?
I think things go in cycles. And, we talked way back when about the internet bubble. And that was a lot of just diversity of thought and ideas and challenging and see what happens. Then that didn't do so well. And things go, and I think we're now entering in a new phase, which is if you are not thinking about things from a different perspective, or at least be aware of it, you're going to get crushed because the world's moving way too fast again. I think it's like sometimes the world is on accelerating and, someone's stepping on the gas and it's going really fast, or it's coasting and just, going at a standard speed. I think we're about to hit another phase of acceleration. And if you're not accelerating, you're going to get left behind.
And is that it's take it you have one of two choices. You can either jump aboard or you can get crushed and be left behind.
And I think left behind is the right phrase. You're going to get stuck in what you're doing, and someone's going to innovate and do something different and faster and better than you. And let's go back to Netflix and DVDs. There's no more Blockbuster around it.
No, it's not.
And, or there might be one store somewhere that someone's got as a token memorabilia, but that's where, technology involves. But it's not just technology. It's going to apply to, many industries, whether it's, apparel or sports. Who ever heard of pickleball 30 years ago? And now there's pickleball courts all over the place. Now, some things stay, football and baseball and basketball have all, they're even bigger and more popular than they were many years ago. But actually, I think that one of the key reasons why that was actually all the fantasy teams and sports betting. If it wasn't for those two elements, I don't think those, lack of a better term, that sports industry wouldn't be as successful as it is today.
So wouldn't people still couldn't go to the game or
Yeah,
or
they would
anything
still go to
else?
the game and they'd still watch their home team on TV. But right now, someone cares about the running back from the Houston Oilers and how many touchdowns they scored last Sunday because they're on their fantasy team. Right. And so it's an industry that's innovated and thought differently and is benefiting. If that hadn't happened, it would still be just fine, but it wouldn't be as successful as it is today.
Who are 2 to 3 people you know who'd be great feature guests for the podcast?
Actually, I've been thinking about maybe some people that are closer. So
Okay.
one would be my brother, Michael. He's started his own consulting firm. I spun out of one and created one and sold it to his partners and now runs a Dave Link Ventures. And so he's one that I'm very impressed with as to what he's been able to do on his own. And another one that I think would be a really interesting one for you is actually your father, who I know well.
You're the second person that said
Oh,
that.
see, I didn't even know that. And for different reasons. One, again, he has his own career path and professional uh, experience. But as a father myself, I think it'd be kind of cool to get asked questions, by my son. And that's the beauty of it. When you're there, he may want you to edit some out, but you can ask him anything you want and get his perspective. And I think that'd be kind of cool for both you and him.
Is there one more, or is it just two?
That's the couple that comes to mind.
Do you have any questions for me?
I think, what are you doing for the holidays?
I don't believe that I'm doing a whole lot for the holidays. I know that I'm still going through my podcast guest list and seeing who's available and working on it. I mean, I know that a friend of mine whose brother I met in middle school,
Mhm.
he started a chocolate company and he got into called Rutgers. It's
Mhm.
a California-based store, but he goes to Babson and he's a senior. And
Okay.
it's a probiotic chocolate company,
Yeah.
but he's trying to get into Whole Foods, but it's like hard to keep the door down.
No, that's, again, sometimes you still keep kicking that door, but if you can't, go open a store next to the Whole Foods, and I don't mean that literally, but there's other ways to approach it. So that's pretty cool. So you do have something going on that's going to keep you busy for the holidays, and hopefully that goes well.
That's the hope.
Yeah.
So is there anything, whether it's podcast growth or anything else, meaning or not? I mean, it's completely up to you.
Yeah. Well, I think, final thoughts for, again, I appreciate being here. Number one. Number two, I think it's pretty cool. I never would have even started, my own channel or put forth that kind of effort or emphasis, focus. So I think and I believe it's something you like doing. So I just encourage you to keep doing it. And it's over time. These people did not build their channels usually on just one or two shows. They have to deliver content over time that's interesting. And I think just keep going. And then when you figure out the right recipe, just pour it all in and go for it.
It's kind of like cooking in the kitchen, if you
Yeah,
will.
well, you got to try that. You got to sometimes try different ingredients and different things. But if you can figure out that wonderful omelet, make it for everybody. Well, I think again, it's been a great experience, and I look forward to watching the podcast myself.
Me as well. Let me finish this up. I just want to say, Mr. Wong, thank you very much for being on. This was episode 17 of the Young Entrepreneurs Podcast. Your story, your discipline, and your financial wisdom are incredibly valuable for the young listeners of the podcast. So if you're watching, you should know what to do by now. Hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss notification when the next video comes out, because they come out on Mondays and Wednesdays around 5 o'clock. And if you are listening on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or Amazon Music, press the subscribe button and hit the notification button, because the same thing will happen. Don't forget to leave us a review as well. It helps grow the channel, and just be honest about it. Don't say this was really well when it really wasn't. Like, just be honest. And as always, thank you for tuning in. And this has been episode number 17. And until next time, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
So, thank you.